just bared down on that guitar the way he felt. And you could feel it come right off the record.
He played the guitar like his heart was on fire. Each note wasn't just music. It was emotion, pain, rebellion, and hope poured into melody. When Buddy Holly sang, it wasn't just a song. It was a cry from the soul of a poor boy from Texas who dared to dream beyond the cotton fields and dusty roads. But behind the horn-rimmed glasses and charming grin was a young man fighting demons most never saw. Betrayals, heartbreak, backstabbing friends, stolen royalties, and a tragic plane crash that silenced a legend at just 22. And then there was her, María Elena Holly, the wife he left behind. For decades, people wondered, why didn't she go to his funeral? In 2024, she finally revealed the haunting truth she'd carried in silence for 65 years. Buddy Holly was born Charles Hardin Holly on September 7, 1936, in Lubbock, Texas, during the brutal height of the Great Depression. America was cracked open by dust storms and despair, and in West Texas, survival often meant going without. The Holly family lived in a modest frame house without insulation, and in some seasons without running water. On hot summer days, they drew water from a backyard well and cooled themselves with paper fans. Winters were bitter and unforgiving. The Hollys, like many families at the time, patched windows with rags and newspapers just to keep out the wind. His father, Lawrence Odell Larry Holly, was a hard-working man who took on anything: grave digging, carpentry, farming, or odd jobs, just to put food on the table. His mother, Ella Pauline, was the quiet rock of the family, resourceful and fiercely protective. She could turn a sack of flour into a week's worth of biscuits and gravy. Despite the harshness of life, there was music in that house. Always music. Even as a toddler, Buddy was drawn to sound like a moth to flame. At night, while the family gathered around the radio to listen to gospel quartets or Bob Wills' Western swing, little Buddy would hum along. His earliest lullabies weren't sung. They were strummed on guitars and plinked out on the family's worn upright piano. His older brothers, Larry Jr. and Travis, played instruments, and Buddy soaked it all in with wide eyes and eager fingers. But poverty didn't just shape Buddy's hunger for success, it gave him empathy. He saw what it meant to scrape by. He learned humility in the dirt, generosity in want, and the discipline to work harder than everyone else. These weren't just lessons from the Depression. They became the core of who he was. Lubbock was small, but its horizons were wide for a dreamer. And from the moment Buddy strummed his first chord, he wasn't just escaping poverty. He was chasing destiny. A quiet revolution was stirring inside a skinny kid with a guitar and a fire no hardship could put out. But in the evenings, when the sun went down, something magical happened. The Holly family came together with instruments in hand. Buddy's mother played piano. His brothers strummed guitars and banjos. And little Buddy? He was the audience. His father would joke, "Someone's gotta listen." But young Buddy was doing more than listening, he was absorbing. At just 5 years old, Buddy wanted the spotlight. At a local talent show, someone handed him a violin. But as a prank, they greased the bow so it couldn't make a sound. Buddy smiled anyway, faked his way through the performance, and won a prize. It wasn't about music that night. It was about spirit. That was the moment he knew he had to perform. But the church-going boy began to change. By high school, Buddy had a double life. By day, he was polite. By night, he snuck out to cafes, smoked, drank, swore, and stole candy and records. Then came a disturbing initiation into adulthood. His first sexual experience, set up by friends who watched and cheered. It wasn't love. It was pressure, performance, and rebellion. And then came the night that changed everything. It was 1955, and Lubbock, Texas, was buzzing with something electric. A new kind of music was sweeping through the South, raw, loud, and unapologetically wild. And at the center of it was a young man with a crooked smile and a guitar that sounded like thunder: Elvis Presley. Buddy Holly had heard the name. He'd even heard a few of the Sun Records singles. But nothing could prepare him for what he saw that night at the Fair Park Coliseum. The moment Elvis hit the stage, the room cracked open. Girls screamed, chairs rattled, and grown men clapped like they were in church. Elvis moved like lightning, his hips, his voice, his swagger. It wasn't just a concert, it was a cultural earthquake. Buddy stood there stunned. Until then, He had been playing country and western in West Texas cafes, mimicking Hank Williams and Bob Wills. But watching Elvis was like peering into the future, and the future was alive. He went back again the next night. This time, Buddy managed to get backstage. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was that Lubbock charm, but Buddy struck up a conversation with Elvis. They talked guitars, music, and rhythm. Elvis saw something in Buddy's eyes, a hunger. He liked Buddy's spark and invited him to open for one of his upcoming shows. It was more than an invitation. It was a cosmic green light. After that encounter, Buddy never played music the same way again. He went home and tore through his old country records. He started blending rhythm and blues into his style. His fingers moved faster, his voice got bolder, and the quiet kid from Lubbock was suddenly chasing something bigger than applause. He was chasing a revolution. Later, Buddy would say, "We owe it all to Elvis." And in that moment, he wasn't just another kid with a guitar. He was a fuse that had been lit. From that night on, the stage wasn't just where Buddy performed, it was where he belonged. Buddy had been playing country and gospel, but after seeing Elvis, he wanted more. He began blending country, rhythm and blues, gospel and raw emotion into something new, something wild, something the world would soon call rock and roll. By 1956, Buddy signed with Decca Records. A secretary accidentally dropped the E in Holly. He became Buddy Holly. That mistake would become one of the most iconic names in music. But the dream quickly soured. Decca assigned Owen Bradley as Buddy's producer, a man who hated rock and roll. Bradley banned Buddy from playing his guitar in the studio. He brought in Nashville session musicians and forced Buddy to record soft pop country that felt fake. The music had no fire. Buddy hated every second of it. His singles bombed. Blue Days, Black Nights barely sold. Modern Don Juan flopped harder. When Buddy recorded That'll Be the Day, Bradley said it was terrible and refused to release it. Then, in January 1957, Decca dropped him. He was broke, humiliated, just 20 years old, and legally barred from re-recording any of his Decca songs for 5 years. They said he was finished. They were wrong. Buddy wasn't done. He returned to Texas and traveled to Clovis, New Mexico to record with Norman Petty, a producer who let artists experiment. Petty's studio had cutting-edge gear and, more importantly, freedom. There, Buddy found his voice. And That'll Be the Day, the same song Decca had trashed, was re-recorded. To get around the Decca contract, they released it under a new band name, The Crickets. The trick worked. Decca didn't notice they were distributing the same artist they dropped. In September 1957, That'll Be the Day hit #1 in both the US and the UK. The Crickets were stars. They broke barriers. They became the first white band to play the Apollo Theater in Harlem. The crowd, expecting black R&B musicians, booed. But by the end of the set, they cheered. Buddy's music had crossed the color line. He followed with a string of hits: Peggy Sue, Oh Boy, Maybe Baby, Rave On, and Listen to Me. Before his 23rd birthday, Buddy had 7 top 40 hits and inspired a generation, including a little band called the Beatles, who named themselves in homage to the Crickets. But behind the scenes, something darker was brewing. Norman Petty, the man who'd given Buddy freedom, began to tighten the leash. He demanded the band carry Bibles. He preached about morals. And then he started stealing. Petty opened bank accounts in his own name, depositing the Crickets' royalties into them. He added his name to publishing credits for songs he never helped write. The result? Petty made more money off Buddy's music than Buddy himself. When Buddy married María Elena Santiago in June 1958, things unraveled fast. Her aunt worked in music and discovered Petty had withheld thousands in royalties. The betrayal ran deep. Petty poisoned the band's friendships, turning Jerry Allison and Joe B. Malden against Buddy. The Crickets fell apart. Buddy lost his band, his friends, his royalties, and the man he once called a mentor. By late 1958, Buddy Holly was exhausted, financially drained, betrayed by those he trusted, and emotionally spent. He had walked away from his manager, Norman Petty. His royalties were locked up in legal battles. The Crickets, the band he'd built from the ground up, had turned their backs. He was 21, alone in New York City, carrying the weight of broken dreams. And then came her. María Elena Santiago was a quiet, elegant woman working as a receptionist at Pure Southern Music Publishing on 1650 Broadway, just a few blocks from the Brill Building. She was 25, sharp, poised, and everything Buddy hadn't been expecting that day. He walked in to drop off some demo tapes and walked out with something else entirely. A heart struck like lightning. In the middle of casual business chatter, he asked her out to dinner. Stunned, she said he'd have to ask her aunt, who also happened to be her boss. Most men would have backed off. Buddy didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone, called the aunt, and got the green light. That night, they talked for 5 straight hours. Buddy gave her a single red rose, and before the night was over, he asked her to marry him. 6 weeks later, on August 15, 1958, they stood side by side as husband and wife. The music industry gasped. A star at the height of his fame, marrying a Puerto Rican Catholic woman in a still segregated America? It was unheard of. Petty, still clinging to the illusion of control, insisted Maria pretend she was just the cricket's secretary. But Buddy refused to hide her. She was his muse, his anchor, and the future he'd never thought he could have. For Buddy, loving Maria wasn't a risk, it was salvation. Together, they moved to Greenwich Village, escaping the Nashville puppeteers and Southern expectations. There, in a tiny New York apartment, Buddy wrote some of the most heartfelt, introspective music of his life. In those months before tragedy, he finally found peace. Not on the charts, but in the eyes of the woman he loved. And that love, fast as it came, would define everything he was willing to fight for. They moved to Greenwich Village. Buddy cut ties with Petty. He was starting over, writing his most personal songs, building a new life, and expecting his first child. But there was one problem: he had no money. The only way to earn fast cash? A grueling winter tour through the frozen Midwest. The Winter Dance Party Tour promised 24 shows in 24 days, zigzagging across thousands of miles in sub-zero temperatures. The buses were old-school buses with no heat. The musicians burned newspapers to stay warm. One drummer, Carl Bunch, got frostbite and was hospitalized. Buddy's new band, Waylon Jennings on bass, Tommy Alsop on guitar, was exhausted, sick, and freezing. Every night they played, every day they suffered. And then came February 2nd, 1959, the Surf Ballroom, Clear Lake, Iowa, their final show. After the show, Buddy had had enough. He chartered a plane to reach the next stop ahead of the bus. The Beechcraft Bonanza had room for 3 passengers. The Big Bopper was sick and asked Waylon Jennings for his seat. Jennings agreed, a choice that haunted him forever. Ritchie Valens and Tommy Alsop flipped a coin for the last seat. Valens won. "It's the first thing I've ever won in my life," he said. He didn't know it would also be the last. At 12:55 a.m. on February 3rd, 1959, the plane took off. Minutes later, it vanished. It crashed in a frozen Iowa field at 170 miles per hour. The right wing struck the ground, the plane tumbled 540 feet, and all 4 men, Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson, and pilot Roger Peterson, died instantly. Buddy's skull was split down the middle. Half his brain was missing, his chest crushed, his body only identified by fingerprints. María Elena was watching TV in New York when she saw the news. No call, no knock on the door, just a cold, breaking news bulletin. Within 24 hours, she miscarried. In one day, she lost her husband and their unborn child. Buddy's mother found out the same way on the radio. She screamed and collapsed. The outrage was national. From that day forward, news outlets adopted a new rule: never release the names of the dead until the families are told. It's a standard still followed today, born from this tragedy. Buddy was buried on February 7th, 1959, in Lubbock. But María Elena wasn't there. For decades, people whispered, "Why didn't she go?" In 2024, she finally told the truth. She blamed herself. She was sick when Buddy left. She'd begged him to stay. She believed, truly believed, that if she had gone with him, he'd still be alive. Doctors told her she was too fragile to travel. But the real reason, guilt, crushing, unbearable guilt. She never visited his grave, never saw where he rested. And that silence, her absence, spoke louder than any eulogy. 2 months after the crash, a farmer found a .22 caliber pistol in the wreckage. It was Buddy's. The rumors flew. Was the pilot shot? Was there a struggle? In 2007, the Big Bopper's body was exhumed. No bullet wounds, no foul play, just questions that would never be answered. Buddy Holly died broke, betrayed, alone on a freezing plain over Iowa. Not because he failed, but because the people around him stole everything he built. But in death, his legacy only grew. His songs inspired the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan. His glasses became a symbol, his name a legend. And that music, that sound that came straight from his heart, still echoes, even now, on every jukebox, every radio, every tearful memory of the day the music died.